Park, the venue for the inaugural European Le Mans race. The rules, the cars and the organisation, the same as for the Le Mans series, but over here in Europe. Good evening, I'm Haven and welcome to our of this 2 hour and 45 opening race in the European Le Mans series. A large number of the American crews on hand, led of course by the all-conquering well, 4 classes in the Donington race. The 2 open prototypes, the LMP 900s, the big category, and the 675s. Then the GTS class, the domain previously of the Chrysler Viper, the Chevy Corvette, and now, of course, of the Celine. And the G class, it's BMW versus Porsche. In that one, the Porsche 911 GT3 are previously dominant, but this year a new V8-powered BMW M3, which Porsche is already rankling about. And Audi, the dominant car this year and last, takes pole position. Dindo Capello and Tom Christensen ahead of Frank Bieler and Emanuele Pirot. The R8s on the first and second spots on the Grove. Honorary Brit Stefan Johansson and honest Brit Guy Smith third up in the Gulf Audi. And fourth fastest, the brand new first showing for the Chrysler Oreca prototype with its American engine. Jules Bouillon and Laura Renault, racing for Henri Pescarolo, start 5th in their Courage with its Peugeot engine, ahead of the better of the Ascaris, Ben Collins, sharing with ex-Formula 3000 ace Werner Lutberger. Best of the Panos only 7th. David Brabham and Jan Magnussen had gear change and suspension problems in qualifying. And the older machine of Jay Cochran and Peter Boss, the privateer Audi LMP, is in 8th spot, ahead of the second of the low-line works cars of Klaus Graf and Walter Salesch. And then the LMP 675 pole sitter is the Martin O'Connell and Warren Carway Ray Rowan run Pilbeam. The pole sitter in the GTS class, Franz Conrad and Oliver Gavin sharing the Conrad Racing Celine, and the pole sitter in GT is the BMW M3 of Frederick Ekblom and Dirk Müller, but their teammates JJ Later and Jörg Miller failed to go into qualifying as a result of an engine problem on their car, and they will start stone last. Onboard camera on the 43 BMW, shooting flame there in the bottom right-hand corner as the field comes round the Melbourne Loop at the end of the second of 2 warm-up laps, ready to go for the green flag, hopefully first time round. And a well-controlled field led by the 2 Audis. Temperatures little above freezing, it has to be said, barely crawling into the 50 degrees Fahrenheit in Britain. And the Easter weekend race underway with a good clean start from the front row of the grid, the 2 Audis wheel to wheel, and on the left-hand side of the second row, Stefan Johansson in the Gulf-coloured Audi, alongside him Yannick Dalmas in the Mopar-engined Oreca prototype built by the Italian Dallara factory team. Well, Guy Smith, Stefan Johansson rather, launching himself into second place down the Craner curves ahead of the number 2 Audi, and then in 5th position behind the Chrysler prototype run by the Oreca team was the better of the Panos, started by David Brabham. Well, of course, Audi have had a dominant season so far. This brand new car, or the car that they introduced brand new last year, the 2000/2001 version of the Audi R8, has not lost a race, and they intend very much to keep it that way. And although it does make the results of the races possibly a little predictable, what we are seeing here is a car that is absolutely dominant in its category. A superb piece of engineering, as last year's 1-2-3 result at Le Mans showed. David Brabham there showing the nose to the Oreca run prototype in 4th place. But Olivier Beretta, who ran, of course, so successfully in the Vipers in Europe and in America for the Oreca team in this brand new car. And the Oreca prototype in 4th place had done a lot of testing over the winter with a Judd V10 before the latest Mopar engine arrived from the States. So in its current format with the Mopar engine, fairly untried, and this is its real first major test. Before the race, Olivier Beretta confided that the car had never run for as much as an hour before they took the start of qualifying. 10th place, Oliver Gavin leading the GTS class, the 675 class being led by the Ray Rowan run Pilbeam. Dick Barber Racing also in the 675 class, last year's GT champions, and their prototype running into a couple of problems in the qualifying hours, but determined to try and make the car a strong feature. Stefan Johansson, of course, this team run by Mike Earl, who used to run the Onyx Formula One racing team and has had a long association in the single-seater world with Stefan Johansson. And Arena International, the team run by Mike Earl, doing a good job with this car. Of course, learning the machine in a way that the factory Audi team don't have to. But look at the G-forces being pulled in acceleration and braking, and the lateral Gs pulling up to 1.8, 1.9 around the end of the lap. And looking back here at the Alex Job Racing Porsche, we're on board the GT leader. This is Fredrik Ekblom, the Swede. He's leading the GT class, and that's Lucas Luhr at the helm of the best of the Alex Job cars, the number 23 car. Down to the Melbourne hairpin, right down the gears. Even these cars at that pace, well, in fact, this is on board now with JJ Lehto. Lehto running up through the field. Jay Cochran in the privately owned and run Panos, the Westwood Racing entry, having a spin there between Coppice and McLean's and going onto the grass, knocking over one of the polystyrene corner marker boards. Whoa, way wide on the exit. Cold tyres perhaps, or just over-enthusiasm. Knocks down the 200-metre board. That's just polystyrene, so no damage to the car. And he continues on track. The Dick Barber racing car just behind him. Well, already the leader is away from this second-place battle as they pass the Ray Mallock run, Celine. That car entered at the last moment by Ray Mallock Limited. Successful sports car racers, particularly late 80s, early 90s with the Ecos C2 cars. And RML, based in Wellingborough in Northamptonshire, the engineering concern behind things like the Ecos touring cars and Vauxhall's Astra rally car in recent years. And also, they are the engineering genius behind the Celine SR7. The cars are finally assembled at Steve Celine's base in California and fitted with their Ford V8 production-based engines. But the trickery going on in Wellingborough, not far from the new Corby Oval. Now, Stefan Johansson in second place, still in the Gulf Audi, headlights ablaze. And right behind him, Frank Biela in the number 2 Audi. The leader already easing away, Tom Christensen. Olivier Beretta in the Chrysler Mopar prototype in 4th spot. Leaderboard in the top left-hand corner. We'll run all the way down through the field, giving you the gaps as well. So 5.3 seconds Biela ahead. Brabham now up to 4th place, ahead of Gilles Bouillon, as the Beretta car starting to not quite reveal the pace it had hoped after practice. In fact, Olivier Beretta, even at this stage of the race, in the opening few laps, was running with a sticking throttle, and the car that had looked so promising, taking the outside second row grid spot, suddenly was a little off the pace. On board now with Tom Christensen, no problems for him. The double apex corner coming onto the long, fast straight back towards the pits, and superb cornering line, absolutely copybook stuff from Christensen. Over the brow, down to the Melbourne hairpin. Camera microphone's not really quite picking up the sounds there, but I thought I'd let you enjoy them anyway. Behind them, Stefan Johansson's car, looking back at the Audi of Frank Biela. On board with Johansson. Let's see what they generate in Redgate 2, 2.1, 2.2 Gs. Then flattening out, his second part down through Hollywood. And to the Craner curves here, 1.8, 1.9, 2.5 G. Big G-forces there. Down 100 miles an hour through the old hairpin. Anybody who's raced as a club racer through there, imagine entering the whole hairpin at 100 miles an hour. Oof, scary stuff. 2.3 as they come through Schwann's curve. And in the traffic, Stefan Johansson doing a great job here. working his way through the back markers, including one of the CK Porsches, a pair of those car in the race. The cars more normally seen in the British Privilege Insurance GT Championship, in what in the British Championship is called the GTS class. Here it's called GT. And Tom Christensen already halfway down to the Melbourne hairpin as Johansson leads Biela through the S's. Now, JJ Leiter and Jörg Müller in the pits for a penalty. Dick Martin there, the chief official in the pits from Sportscar, the organising body, overseeing all of the penalties, and there were a large number of them, it has to be said. Leito pinged for passing under waved yellows as he worked his way up the GT field. And an awful lot of stop-go penalties. As I said, there were more yellow flags down than in your average American football game. And a number of drivers were stop and go'd for passing under yellows, a number more for aggressive driving. Now, Sportscar, the governing body of the American and European and Asian Pacific Le Mans series, has tried to bring to the attention of the drivers of the faster cars their behaviour in traffic with the slower cars. A number of slower cars have been damaged, punted off the track in passing incidents, and drivers know that if they take too many risks and touch other cars as they're in traffic, other cars that they are lapping particularly, then they may well lose any advantage by making a last gasp passing effort by going into the pits for a stop and go. Well, here is the moment when Stefan Johansson, coming out of the old hairpin, didn't quite get the run on the Ray Mallock run at Saleen, and Frank Biela, blinding overtaking manoeuvre, reminiscent of Nigel Mansell at his most opportunistic, only without quite so much whinging afterwards. Frank Biela taking second place back from Stefan Johansson. Johansson really just unable to find a quick lunge through the old hairpin past the Saleen. Into the pits, Didier de Radiguez and Eric van der Poel's LMP 675 car. This is the brand new Dick Barber racing car, the Reynard Judd. And it's a 3.4 litre normally aspirated Judd engine. It's a development of Judd's Formula 3000 engine. And again, a brand new machine. Didier de Radiguez and Eric van der Poel, of course, both very experienced sports car drivers. De Radiguez running last year with the Raffinelli Olive Garden team. And they had a number of problems too for this car. This is the originally class-leading Frederick Ekblom BMW. And this car coming in with a chronic misfire, sounding more like a V5 than a V8. Ekblom early on staying in the car for what was a long spark plug and plug lead changing operation. This was to continue, and it would not be the only stop either for this car during the race. Neither BMW ran cleanly through to the finish, and it seems that although the potential for this pure race-bred 4-litre engine is great, at the moment the teething problems are rather greater. Back at Donington Park, this is the LMP 675 leading car, the Ray Rowan run Pilbeam with its normally aspirated 3-litre Nissan engine had been a winner in the hands of Martin O'Connell at the previous weekend's opening race of the FIA Sports Car Championship at Barcelona. And here it was leading the class. Warren Carway, the Irish driver, waiting to share with a victory the previous Sunday and the birth of a daughter earlier in the week. He was having a good weekend. So too, it seemed, were the Ray Mallock pair. Their brand new and never previously run Saleen SR7 going strongly. It had done 2 shakedown laps at Donington Park, at Silverstone before Donington Park, in the course of which it had broken 2 fuel pumps and an alternator. They were hastily replaced with suitable items from the Mallock spare shelves on the way up to Donington Park, and the car was going strongly. Well, that wasn't enough, obviously, to stop them being lapped by the runaway Audis, and the car at the head of the field, Tom Christensen, leading comfortably. Olivier Beretta by this stage back up to 4th place as the lead Panos struck trouble. David Bradman and Jan Magnussen's car had been hampered all weekend. Problems for the flipper finger electronic gear change meant that they started the race with a normal gear selector. They'd also had suspension problems, aerodynamic problems, but for Martin O'Connell, the ex-Formula 3 driver and several-time national class winner in the category, his problem was slightly more evident. The Audi wasn't quite prepared to wait for the next corner or the next straight before it got by. Christensen elbowed his way down the inside, and whether it was a 50-50 or not, the officials decided that Christensen could have waited for the little bit of straight between McLean's and Coppice, and they would then issue a penalty for him. So Tom Christensen, without knowing it yet at this stage, about to be penalised from the lead of the race. Martin O'Connell, as you saw, was able to rejoin with no problem. By this stage, Christensen was 10 seconds ahead of the battle between Biela in second and Johansson in third. And easing away from the rest of the field. As I mentioned, the Panos in trouble, and David Brabham down at the bottom of the old hairpin. Brakes also prevent the car from showing a competitive edge here. In Texas, the opening race of the year in the heat, they looked like they might be able to take the race to Audi, but now 3 races in, that looks to have been very much a false dawn for the LMP7 machine. So Christensen safely through most of the back markers. Frank Biela in the background, coming up behind him, but this is what would bring the leader into the pits for a stop-and-go penalty. Martin O'Connell not exactly on the racing line, but only a foot or two off it, and certainly not quite enough room for Tom Christensen to get through, no matter how much of a Super Dane he is. Well, the LMP 675 machine undamaged by that, and so too was the Audi. However, the Audi, as I said, stuck in the pits for its stop-and-go penalty, or would be forced to come into the pits for its stop-and-go penalty. The second-placed Audi, Frank Biela still motoring on and easing away from Stefan Johansson. GT lead at this stage, incidentally, in the hands of the Alex Job Racing Porsches. BMW of Frederick Ekblom that had led the class in the pits with engine problems, and JJ Leto working his way up the field, being dropped back. Oliver Gavin in the pits.
A sensation in GTS this year. Oliver Gavin won at Sebring, beating the Corvettes. They're not here, Ollie, but seems like he stopped a little bit early.
Yeah, we've got a problem with the rear of the car. I'm not entirely sure what it is, but the boys had a look at it, and Franz has now gone out, and he's going to try it, see how we go. But the car is oversteering hugely at the moment, which we've never ever had with this car, so maybe there's a problem. So
I know you had an upright problem earlier in the weekend. Did you fix that?
Yeah, we thought we'd fix that. We don't think that's the problem now. Maybe a differential problem or something, but we're not sure. But Franz is driving now. He's going to make an assessment on it, and then we'll see how we go. Conditions right now is drizzling. Do you need to stay on slicks, or will people be looking at intermediates? No, I think slicks still. It's not raining hard enough. It's so cold here. It's just getting the heat into the tyres is the problem. But I think slicks for the minute, and then go from there. Thanks, mate. All right.
On board with Stefan Johansson as the Golf car comes into the pits for its first stop. Question whether Audi would be able to get by with just 2 stops in the 2-hour 45-minute race. Donington, not only a colourful looking racetrack, but also with a variety of climbs and dives, high and low speed corners, and several heavy acceleration zones. The Gulf team feeling they may have to go for a splash and dash towards the end of the race, but with the cold temperatures and the damp in the practice days, perhaps not having conclusively made their calculations. Certainly the Yersrun Audi team, the number 1 and 2 cars, would have had just as many problems, but of course they have got far more experience with trying to decipher what the figures coming from the car mean. Well, the pit stop being handled by the Arena team. At the same time, the Yers car in. Tom Christensen in earlier for a stop-and-go penalty for knocking off the Rowan Run Hillbeam Nissan. Retained the lead, although his lead was greatly reduced, obviously, by that penalty. And with the changeable weather, and particularly with the cold temperatures, the Michelin tyre engineers pretty certain that there's going to be no problem with double and possibly even triple stinting the tyres. So Christensen back out and into the race, and his teammates in the number 2 Audi in second place about to stop. Down through the Craner curves, the Celine ahead, and ahead of that one of the Alex Joe Porsches, neither of which presents a problem for Christensen, and he manages to avoid both of them as he heads for the apex of the old hairpin and continues on the climb up past Donington Hall. Well, the Audi's progress pretty serene at this stage, despite that penalty handed out for injudicious driving. Slow car on the side of the circuit, being pushed up the hill by the marshals. Thankless task. Down to the old hairpin he comes, and the other Celine, the Ray Mallock run car, is in front of him now. And that car being driven by the Belgian Bruno Lambert and another British GT Championship refugee, Ian McKellar Jr. McKellar drove the TVR Speed 12 with Bobby Verdon-Roe in last year's British Championship, so he's certainly plenty used to big horsepower. The Audi back down past the pits as the number 2 car comes out, and that's how close it was after the first fuel stops. Christensen, of course, at speed and used to, or more used to, the handling of his fully fuel-laden car once more. The privateer Audi, of course, there again at the bottom of the old hairpin, as you saw, just flashed by. And that's the number 8 car of Jay Cochran and Peter Boss, looking to get the engine fired again. That, of course, the big old 6-litre V8, the stock block-based engine, as opposed to the purpose-built 4-litre racing engine, the V8 that is currently on in the power unit of the low-line prototype. Christensen continuing his domination of this Donington Park race. Of course, like all the Le Mans Series races, it's a timed race. And off goes JJ Leto in the number 42 BMW, and that was after a collision with another Audi, this time the number 2 Audi of Frank Bieler, the guilty party. And you can see damage there on the right-hand side, the big flare over the front wheel, partly torn off. The Conrad Celine still going. Not far behind it is the Ray Mallock car, and one of the Panos coming up behind. Also in that shot you saw the Courage, Peugeot Courage, which was the best non-Audi car at last year's 24 Hours of Le Mans, and of course run by Henri Pescarolo. And both BMWs on course at the moment. The Leto car running slowly, right coming up behind him. Of course, the number 3 car, and that is the Ascari. Ben Collins, another ex-British Formula 3 driver at the helm of that one. Werner Luckberger, the Formula 3000 refugee, not getting a chance to drive it. Collins without any drive. The Judd engine running strongly, but it seems something in the gear train, the differential, had given up the ghost. Magnussen now having taken over from Brabham in the Panos, but still the problems won't go away. The problems in terms particularly of their lack of pace compared to that of the Audi. And Lucas Lew and Randy Pobst, first and second in GT, leading the category still for Alex Job Racing, as the much fancied BMWs vault up and back down the leaderboard as a result of their A, pace, and B, general number of woes. Frederick Ekblom's 43 car stone last at this stage. We saw him actually going at pace as he caught up with JJ Leto, who was hobbling back to the pits after being nerfed off by the number 2 Audi. And you may expect that the number 1 car, having been stop and goed for punting a slower car off the track, the number 2 car should have been as well. Well, indeed it was. So we had both of the factory Audis into the pits for stop and go penalties for roughhouse driving. And indeed, if they'd been seriously challenged by the Panos, and if the Johansson Audi had been able to stay right on their front-running pace, then we may have seen a very different result to the Donington Park race. And as it was, the factory Joost-run Audi team just had that little bit of an edge on everybody else. JJ Leto back up into 3rd in GT, ahead of Johnny Molam and Mike Yules, who's sharing with Robin Liddell in one of the CK Motorsport Porsches in 5th position. Well, the number 2 Audi in, and Slicks coming off, and Slicks going back on. And no stage really was the drizzle at Donington Park that bad. Punctured right rear, bringing Frank Bieler in there. And the driver change being effected. Emanuele Pirro ready to go. Ralf Juttner there with the headset on, the crew chief for the Audis, supervising their changes. And the number 2 car now going a lap down as Christensen preparing to make another pit stop, his 2nd and hopefully final. And with the advantage he's made, chances are that Dindo Capello will be able to lean the Audi off even more to try and cruise a little bit towards the end of the race. I'll leave you in the tender mercies of Tom Christensen. Join us for more after this.
Easy change accessories, skill click, no keys, no screwdrivers.
Skill, everything you need.
Compact is more than just a logo on the BMW Williams F1 car. Compact technology with Intel Pentium 3 processors enables the race team to analyze the car and make decisions during the race itself. The engineers to experience the ride even from thousands of miles away. And Frank Williams to realize the team's ambition of winning the World Championship again. Enterprise solutions from Compact.
The new Elantra. With front and side airbags, ABS and EBD braking systems. It's reassuringly safe, because beauty should always be more than skin deep. Hyundai, prepare to want one. Skill, everything you need.
My name is Master Chief Billy Sunday, and I am God.
A man who won't give up and a man who won't back down
Think you're better than me? You're damn right I am.
are about to test the limits of survival.
I got a man dying down there.
Robert De Niro, Cuba Gooding Jr., Men of Honor, only in theaters.
Welcome back to Donington Park. This is the inaugural European Le Mans race. This is the Orica Run Chrysler prototype. The car suffering from a long pit stop with sticking throttle when it was brought in by starting driver Olivier Perretti. Yannick Dalmas now at the helm. And a couple of teething problems for the car. Damage there as well. That needed to be taped up. Some tall, lanky bloke in the background, not quite sure who he was, talking into his microphone. Yannick Dalmas patiently waiting, and the team very happy with the performance of the car in terms of outright pace in qualifying. It took 4th place on the grid, and it was just 0.6 of a second slower than Audi's pole-sitting #1 car. As the team said, it's all very well to go testing, but you really never have much of an idea what anybody else is doing. Even if you go to the same track, who can say what conditions are? And this first race for them, officially a race, but in real terms, an extended test, proving that the car has got bags of potential. Well, after problems for the Conrad car, the GTS class became the domain of the Ray Mallock run Celine. And that car romping away from the stricken Conrad machine. Great to see these cars out, but unfortunately just the pair of them in the GTS class. Doesn't go to take anything away from the efforts of both teams to get the cars to the grid and to keep them running. And there is the Conrad car, and right behind, one of the PK Porsches, the 61 car of Humphrey and Maserati, taking on the best of the American teams in the GT class. Well, despite the problems for the Panos, Jeff Brabham in 4th place and still pushing on, trying to salvage as many points as possible from what was turning into a fairly wretched weekend for the American crew. Coming in to hand over the number 50 car once more to Jan Magnussen. In at the same time was the Gulf car. And these guys figuring that 2 pit stops may just about be enough, but not certain. Guy Smith taking over anyway at the 2nd stop from team boss Stefan Johansson. Johansson had crashed the car in qualifying, and Guy Smith very relieved indeed that it was the boss that crashed it first, I'm sure, meaning that he could now go out and give it as large as he dared, safe in the knowledge that even if he put it into the barriers, he wouldn't have to come home and face the wrath of Johansson for being the first man to crash their car. Pit stop for the Pescarolo Run Courage with its Peugeot engine, and this car expected to be another strong challenger at Le Mans. All of their season is geared towards the 24 Heures. Of course, Yves Courage's team based within the confines of the Le Mans 24-hour track. And they need to do something about the grease on those nuts. The air gun there taking forever and a day to get the tyres off, and that's the kind of slow pit work that doesn't help your cause in a 24-hour race. Chouboulion sharing with Laurent Redon, their 3rd driver, Sébastien Bourdais, on Formula 3000 duty at Imola the same day, and so therefore not part of the team for this race, but will feature at Le Mans and for a number of their other outings. And the very quiet sounding Peugeot whistling away, turbocharged V6, as Tom Christensen brings the Audi in for what will be the last time for him. Unplugging everything, Audi did plenty of practice. He's sitting up there to stretch the seatbelts so that Dindo Capello can get into them without too much trouble. The driver allowed to help his co-driver into the car, allowed to help him with the belts, with the straps, with the radio plugs and everything else. Other than that, only the fuel man allowed to touch the car during refueling. The air guns not allowed to start until the fuel has come off. Drama's further back for BMW. All looking very spectacular indeed, but some electronics gremlin pouring raw fuel down the very hot exhaust pipes of the V8 every time that Dirk Muller tried to start it up. Overseeing things. Go on, give it another try, son, they said to Dirk a couple of times, and it still gave its best impression of a flamethrower. Finally deciding that perhaps this was not going to be a simple problem that went away. Off went the lead Audi. And under manual power, the number 42 BMW now with no rear wheel arch or no front wheel arch on the right hand side, and a very smoky looking thing being pushed away. Final stop potentially for the number 2 Audi. Again in the background you saw the watchful figure of Dick Martin, the head of the sports car pit lane crew, and the man who hands out all the rules and enforces all the penalties in the pit lane. As ever, being very careful about the safety aspect of this. Cars were brought in for penalties for things like the refueler not having the visor shut on his helmet, which may seem a little trivial to you, but if you're wearing a helmet with a visor, you may as well keep it down, and that's the rule. Well, Emanuele Pirro at the wheel of the second car. Pirro going slightly longer than the leader on fuel, should make it all the way to the end.
Tom had a great opening stint. How's the car today, and the conditions must be pretty tough?
Yeah, they are, because obviously the surface is very smooth and it's very cold, and with our Le Mans cars on this circuit, the tires works very well, but you start to slide a little bit after some laps, and you wonder, can you do 2 stints on them and not? And this was my only worry, apart from the stop and go. But I did 2 stints on the tires, and the car runs beautifully.
Yeah, we're going to try and have a chat here with an interested spectator, Alan McNish, current ALMS champion. Good to see you, mate. How the testing chores been going with the Toyota?
It's been good. We've had the first test. Everything ran better than expected, to be honest. We did quite a lot of miles, and I was particularly pleased to get in, feel the car, and actually feel quite confident in it.
I understand you've had a few offers for the month of June. Everyone's keen to have you in their car. I know Stefan Johansson has spoken to you. Panos was out there this morning trying to pull you over his way. Any chance of seeing you at Le Mans this year?
I think there's a very high chance of seeing him at Le Mans. However, I think there's a very low chance of seeing me actually in a car. I want to go because I want to see the race. I want to see it from the other side of the fence and not have to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning, go out and do a triple stint. And I want to enjoy seeing you guys at 9 in the morning really bleary-eyed and red-eyed. But I'll be there as a spectator, not as a racer.
All right, Alan, great to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks.
Well, with British Eurosport going through the night, you can sit at home and be bleary-eyed for the 9 o'clock in the morning call for this year's Le Mans. We'll be bringing you all the action from the Great Classic, of course, and expect to see the Audis featuring strongly there. The number 2 car almost a complete lap behind, just about to be put a lap down by Dindo Capello in the number 1 machine. Dindo, you may have thought, was a regular Italian shortening of Ronaldo. Not so, apparently. It's a baby. He lived very close to a church, and his first words were imitations of the noise of the church bell, and that's why his parents nicknamed him Dindo. Pretty much in the lines of Ding Dong, I guess. Guy Smith up to 3rd place, or in 3rd place still, in the Golf car. A lap behind, just there in the shot. And the best of the GTS cars. In 9th position, Sascha Masson and Christian Menzel in the 2 Alex Job cars, leading in the GT class in 10th and 11th places. And the Martin O'Connell, Warren Carway, LMP 675 Nissan, a Nissan engine Pilbeam, I should say, leading the LMP 675 class, just about to be gobbled up by the leader, hopefully safely this time. And on target for a 2nd LMP 675 win in 6 days. Having won at Barcelona on Sunday, Warren Carway at the wheel dashed home for the birth of his baby daughter during the week, and back at Donington Park for the Easter weekend, leading their class comfortably, and with the Dick Barber Racing being the first team to retire, taking their 675 prototype out of the fray. It was left to the row and run Pilbeam Nissan to get to the end to win the category. So between Magnussen and Graf in the two panels was the Pescarolo run Courage with its Peugeot engine, and third in the GT class, Robin Liddell in the PK Porsche, Johnny Molam in fourth, and the second PK car in fifth place ahead of the Spanish drivers, Luca Drudi, Kai Wankum, and the rest of them down the GT order. Steve Earle, the driver, shown off there in the Dick Barber Racing prototype. Well, so far no missed beats for the Gulf Audi. Stefan Johansson and Guy Smith doing a very serious job in this car of taking on the factory. Johansson lunging inside the number 2 car at the first corner and holding on to that second place until he was caught up in back markers earlier in the race, and they at the moment seem to be the only team with a chance of keeping the lead Audis honest. Again, working their way through the traffic. And Guy Smith really reveling in the performance and the handling of this car, and the fact that Emanuele Pirro can't shake him off. Pirro, of course, may have his mind on higher things like saving fuel and making sure they don't need to go for a splash and dash. Doubtless, Guy will be working with the mixture weakened off as much as possible, commensurate with actually keeping the engine alive. Still enjoying this scrap with the works car. Well, the battle not just for the position on the racetrack, but also, of course, to make it to the end of the race in that position. And that may be a problem for those who have used a little too much fuel. Audis 1, 2 and 3, the Paynos in 4th, and the Courage in 5th position, ahead of the second Paynos. Top 6, all LMP 900 cars, as you might expect. Well, nearly 2-hour mark being reached in the race. And Guy Smith, who has returned to racing in Britain from racing successfully in the Indy Lights Series in the USA, of course, made his single-seater mark in Britain, racing up to the British Formula 3 Championship level, and sponsored, partly sponsored at least, and still is, by his dad, who is the largest caravan manufacturer in the UK, Swift Caravans, and a long time, indeed, arch motorsport enthusiast. On board now with Guy Smith. Let's ride with him as we chase the number 2 Audi in the battle for second. Got him. Classic British Formula 3 touring car, whatever you like, Donington Park move. Biela going to the inside, Pirro rather, going to the inside at the Melbourne hairpin to shut the door on the inside. Guy Smith chops back out wide, hoping to take a much tighter exit, and then finds that Pirro has in fact overcooked it. He momentarily locks the brakes of the number 2 car, and Smith is by him for second place. In the gravel, the Panos, the number 50 car, And Brabham twice dropped off the road by the car. Replay of that move by Smith. Pirot covers to the inside. Smith goes out wide, cuts back in. You just saw Pirot there slide a little bit as he locked up. Guy just checks the mirrors to make sure he's got the line, takes it, and with it, second place. Great treat on board that move. And look again. Pirot goes to the inside, and the gap widens at the apex. Now that's the great thing about the Melbourne hairpin. 2 or 3 lines in, 2 or 3 different lines out. Really is a great overtaking position. It may be several years since Guy Smith has raced Formula 3 in Britain, but he hasn't forgotten the tricks. Sells the dummy to the inside, knowing full well he's not going to go for it. Watch how wide he comes out now. He's turning in, and as Pirot's getting off the brakes here, you see the stab of flame as he comes off the throttle, off the brakes rather. Pirot is already dead because Guy Smith has passed him on the power. Welcome back to the closing stages of the inaugural European Le Mans Series race. We're in the dying moments, and Guy Smith comes in from second place in the Gulf Audi for a last-minute splash and dash. And bearing in mind that this is the battle for second place, a slightly tardy stop by the arena crew. Well, they know they've only got to take a few litres, but it really looks as though they weren't in much of a hurry. Guy Smith certainly was. Very, very eager to get on with the job. We saw just before the break how he passed Emanuele Pirot in the number 2 Audi for second place. And that lost with the splash and dash. Well, courtesy of coming in later, it was pretty likely that the number 2 Audi was not likely to make a final splash and dash pit stop, but that was not necessarily the case with the race leader. Question mark still hovered over the progress of the number 1 car of Tom Christensen and Dindo Capello. Well, Guy Smith with enough fuel on now, and the afterburners fully lit once more, setting off around Donington Park's scenic racetrack in the hunt for the number 2 car and the number 2 place on the finishing order. One of the Alex Joe Porsches ahead, gobbled up easily down the straight. And so too is the Johnny Molam car, the number 52 machine. And the race leader comes in for his splash and dash. Notice how much quicker the Audi team are getting round there. The fuel man already ready with the gantry on that side of the car. And Ronaldo Capello ready to go. Gets the go, and away he is off and gone. This time no stalling from the Audis. They seem to just about have cured that problem, which is a particular note on this car. 675 Pilbeam Nissan coming up behind him, but Capello does not lose the lead. And Audi looking for their 11th consecutive victory with this R8. Warren Carway leading the 675 class. There he is in the Pilbeam Nissan. And the car running absolutely faultlessly on board the Alex Job Racing Porsche. This is the GT leader, Sascha Maassen, now at the helm. Teammate Christian Menzel is in second spot, having taken over from Randy Pobst. Menzel catching Maassen, but Maassen trying to save the fuel and not head in for a second pit stop. The car's only made 1 stop and has run very conservatively all the way through the race. Being passed first by the Celine, then, as you saw there, by Laurent Redon in the Pescarolo car. Guy Smith flies by. And penultimate lap for them. Just a couple of more minutes in the 2 hours and 45 race duration. Dindo Capello getting ready to take the Audi number 1 car around its final lap. No white flag this time, but the team will know that the time has ticked away, and before he finishes his next lap, 2 hours and 45 minutes will be up. Tom Christensen starring in the early stages, really building a huge advantage, particularly over their teammates Biela and Pirot in the second car. Taking one chance too many, perhaps, in traffic, and paying the penalty for that, but still not losing the lead. So for Dindo Capello, who crewed Alan McNish to last year's title so reliably and forthrightly, the rewards coming this year with a string of victories for himself and Christensen. Number one by name and number one by nature, this car, quite clearly. So the Audi steamroller marches on, and the prospects of them being resoundingly thrashed at Le Mans this year seem more and more remote by the day. The American Le Mans Series is an Audi-controlled protectorate, so too, it would seem, on the showings at Donington Park at least, is the European Le Mans Series. The checkered flag falls for Ronaldo Capello. Yost team on the pit wall celebrating, the Danish flag there for Tom Christensen, his teammate. And the Italian acknowledging the crowd, and despite the almost sub-zero temperatures and the fact that it was Easter weekend, which is not only a big family occasion in Britain, but also B, a huge motorsport occasion in Britain with a lot of other distractions. Big crowd coming out to Donington Park. 675 class winner Warren Carway brings the Ray Rowan run Pilbeam Nissan to the line. Behind him, the Panos, the Orica prototype, and the Courage, all coming to the line. The Golf car of Guy Smith also coming through. The GTS class will go to Bruno Lambert and Ian McKellar Jr. with Ray Mallock Racing's Celine SR7. First time out for the car, a return to winner's circle for the Mallock sports car operation. And in the GT class, the Alex Joe Racing Porsches first and second, but also on the podium, British drivers Mike Hewells and Robin Liddell.
Part of the race then, and busy it is indeed. You can see caught back to the fore as the green flag is waved.